Hello there, and welcome back to this new episode of Ignition Time. I'm going to talk to you about corporate retaliation against hazard pay. Yes, I said corporate retaliation, and why I think this has the potential to kill the $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, let me talk to you about hazard pay really quick. What if a company was asked to pay additional hazard pay to its workers who put themselves on the front lines of this pandemic every single day? One example of an essential worker, in my opinion, is a grocery store worker, because grocery store workers are actually in close contact with hundreds of strangers, potentially thousands of strangers, depending on how busy the grocery store is. And so it's one thing to tell a grocery store worker, we appreciate your work, you're so valuable, you're fulfilling the needs of the community, we appreciate you. It's one thing to tell them that, but folks, we got to put our money where our mouth is. And so what if a company goes beyond just saying, hey, we appreciate you, and actually pays them? Well, I'm about to show you an example of a company that did the exact opposite. On your screen, you'll see an article from the Washington Post. Kroger to close more stores instead of giving more workers hazard pay. And this happened after the city of Seattle passed a $4 an hour hazard pay mandate. So what did Kroger do in response? Instead of paying the workers hazard pay, and by the way, Kroger's making a good deal of money, what Kroger decided to do is simply close the stores. Yes, according to new reporting from the Washington Post, and as always, you'll get a link to all of our resources in the description section below. The grocery store giant Kroger plans to close 2 stores in Seattle after the city passed a $4 an hour hazard pay mandate for grocery store workers. Kroger has received huge criticism from local officials, and keep in mind that Kroger recorded one of their most profitable years due to strong demand as a direct result of the pandemic. And they blamed the closure of the stores on the new city mandate. This would raise costs at the 2 grocery centers, and they said those 2 grocery stores were already underperforming. According to a new statement from Kroger, they took a direct shot at Seattle City Council. Here's the statement. Unfortunately, Seattle City Council didn't consider that grocery stores, even in a pandemic, operate on razor-thin profit margins in a very competitive landscape. When you factor in the increased costs of operating during the pandemic, coupled with consistent financial losses at these 2 locations and this new extra pay mandate, it becomes impossible to operate a financially sustainable business. So folks, this is a sign of things to come if we have $15 an hour minimum wage. I want you to think about this for a second. $4 an hour additional hazard pay for grocery store workers mandated by the city of Seattle. In response, one of the largest grocery stores in the country, which essentially has been making more money during the pandemic, says, hey, wait a minute, 2 of our stores which are not performing well, we can't afford to pay hazard pay to them for those 2 stores, and let's shut it down. Now, you heard the company's statement, but I can tell you that the $15 an hour minimum wage is going to take these kinds of problems, these kinds of occurrences, and magnify them by 1,000 times. Because now you'll have small businesses and companies all over the country cutting jobs and saying, hey, since you're making us pay $15 an hour, we're going to have to cut back jobs. This is the reality of the world that we live in. To give our viewers and subscribers some sense of perspective, when the pandemic began, hazard pay for essential workers, including grocery store workers, was indeed very popular. This was in the second quarter and the third quarter of last year. So this was popular amongst many corporate grocery stores and retail giants because there was a lot of media attention on the plight of hazard workers, or workers who were on the front lines of this pandemic. Companies like Kroger, Target, Walmart, Amazon, Rite Aid, and Albertsons all instituted a hazard pay policy. But as soon as the country started reopening, a lot of these companies started ending those hazard pay policies. Kroger specifically ended the hazard pay policy and simply provided a one-time $400 bonus. So some cities started to address this issue directly and started mandating hazard pay for workers. Seattle was one of the cities that instituted a hazard pay policy towards the end of January, about 3 weeks ago. Other cities, specifically left-leaning cities, progressive cities, are also looking into hazard pay, including Berkeley, Oakland, and Los Angeles in California. there has been direct criticism and corporate retaliation against these cities from grocery stores. In fact, the Northwest Grocery Association and the Washington Food Industry Association sued Seattle. Yes, they sued Seattle, and Kroger also is criticizing the cities. In fact, what Kroger did was they closed 2 stores in Long Beach, California, after the city of Long Beach passed a measure that required large grocers to pay an extra $4 an hour to hazard workers. Here's a quote from Jeff Alexander, a 65-year-old who works at one of the Seattle Kroger locations that is about to close. I think this says everything. This puts it in terms that are even better than I could explain. Jeff says, the $4 an hour thing that really set it off, to me, it's retaliation. They talk about, well, we appreciate your hard work, but when it's time to talk about money, it's a whole different story. And what's ironic is, according to a November analysis by the Brookings Institution, 13 major companies, including grocery stores, made substantially more money. The report found that profits at some of these companies rose 16 to $17 billion, or approximately 40%, whereas the average pay of the average worker at these locations, the frontline workers, went up only $1.11. That's just 10% since the pandemic began. So think about this. Increase in profits 40%, increase in pay 10%. Where does the remaining money go? The remaining money goes back to the shareholders, because these companies now start to do more and more share buybacks, including buybacks of their own stocks, which then in turn benefit their shareholders, because when a company buys back its own stock, the stock goes up in value because there are more buyers than sellers. One comment that summarizes the hypocrisy of the entire situation, the corporate retaliation, if you will, and actually helps us understand why cities had to step in when the corporate giants decided to cut back on their own voluntary hazard pay measures that they instituted last year. Remember, they did this last year without the cities having to step in. One individual who pointed out the hypocrisy of the whole thing is Tom Geiger. He's a special projects director at UFCW 21, which is the largest private union in the state of Washington, with over 44,000 members in grocery stores, retail, meat packing. Here's what Tom said. He said, the door has been wide open for them to voluntarily reinstate hazard pay that they cut last May, and we see how far that got us. So this essentially tells us that essentially these companies instituted these types of policies when it was popular for them to do so, because it's not like you're not going to pay hazard pay in the middle of the pandemic, but now that things are starting to get better and the corporate bottom line is improving, you say, oh, certain stores are doing badly, we have to shut down those stores. This indeed reveals the hypocrisy of the entire situation. And so what is the city expected to do? The city is expected to work with unions and then create mandates, force companies to do this, and in return, companies close down stores, and that leads to more unemployment. This is the reason why this kind of corporate retaliation could sabotage the $15 minimum wage. Folks, I believe that those who need help the most should get it. But this is a clash between capitalism and economic realities. This is a clash between what is right and what is profitable. This is a clash between what is fair and what is true. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I appreciate you watching. Thank you so much for watching. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. I would really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. But please click like and subscribe, because it really helps out the YouTube algorithm. It takes you 1 second to do that, but it really helps the channel a great deal, and it is your way of rewarding me and my team for all the efforts that go into the production of these videos. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.